Well, welcome along to the latest Sporting Life Racing podcast. Delighted to be joined again by Timeform flat editor David Johnson, Ed Chamberlin and Cornelius Lysaght. Cornelius, the white smoke has emerged. We've got a new BHA chief executive in January. Julie Harrington takes the role and has been an appointment that seems to have been widely welcomed.
Certainly no one will be using that old phrase, the biggest shock since Foynaven, because I think we've known that her name has been very much in the frame for some time. It could just be that she's the perfect candidate for racing in that, A, she's got plenty of experience outside racing, and that is most recently with British Cycling, but with the FA, with Whitbread, with BA. But also, she's got plenty of experience inside horse racing. So there's going to be no chance of the sneering brigade coming out after she joins in the new year and saying, what's racing done? It's appointed someone who wouldn't have a clue about anything. So she ran New Toxteth Racecourse for a time. She worked for Stan Clark and Northern Racing. So her credentials from that point of view are pretty good. I've been consulting my spies in the cycling world, asking for their view. They think that racing's got a really good figure. She is, if racing's got to be steered through a few areas of turbulent water, over funding, over regulation, over all sorts of different matters. Well, she's managed to steer cycling through some turbulent waters. There were allegations of bullying. There were allegations about the keeping of medical records, the infrastructure of cycling, and there was an infamous, famous, whichever way you want to look at it, incident involving Jess Varnish and the coach Shane Sutton, and there were allegations of sexism there and unfairness too. And she managed just to steer everything through that. She's apparently a really convivial person as well. People said they thoroughly enjoyed a glass of wine with her and a chat about everything. So all in all, I think the odds-on favourite is one, but she could be a really good person to come. She's got a bit of everything. That's what strikes me. I was just looking at Ed's face while I was talking there, and I was trying to work out whether he was frozen because of the Wi-Fi or frozen in disbelief that I'd actually done some research into cycling. But all in all,
very impressed, because I love my cycling. Very impressed by that.
But Ed, I mean, first of all, commiseration to you. You were 16-1 chance to land the role with Betfair Paddy Power and
33 in places.
33 in places.
I've got my iPad on my knee. You can see it shaking with laughter.
When the ITV negotiations were dragging on, I was tempted to step in. But this she's now got the job. But what a heck of a job she faces. The Racing Post have put 6 things at the top of her inbox, and they're all daunting projects that she faces. Just how big a task is this, and how big a shoes does Nick Rust leave to be filled?
Yeah, he's done a terrific job in difficult circumstances, which I've written a couple of times about on Sporting Life, and I've always described the difficulty of the job. I'm very encouraged, and Cornelius is absolutely spot on. I love my cycling, and she went into an absolute minefield with the bullying and the allegations and the jiffy bag and everything that was going on, and it steered it very cleverly. And I was very encouraged to read the quotes of her coming back to the sport she loves and things like that, and the boss of cycling expressing his disappointment and the fact that she's gone to the sport she wants to work in, which is great for racing, and that says it all. But she's got such a difficult job because that in-tray that you talk about there, the 6 things listed in the Racing Post, she's only got a certain amount of power at her disposal. Now, the most important thing when I've talked about this job is that she works in tandem as a combination with Anna-Marie Phelps. Now, I'm a big Anna-Marie Phelps fan. I think she's exactly what's needed in that position as chairman, because effectively in both jobs, diplomacy is at the absolute core of the job. Now, listed in those 6 things, the most important is clearly going to be the state that racing's in during and post coronavirus. And as the chief exec of the BHA, you've only got so much power because effectively you're trying to be the boss of your bosses. Now, it's all very well when racing's model is going well and that collaboration model is working in decent times. But when it's difficult and tough decisions to be made, that's when that collaboration model comes undone. So she's going to have to be very, very skillful in the way she charts her path to try and meet the end goals that we need to meet in racing. But she's clearly got the skill set to do that in tandem with Anna-Marie Phelps. Hopefully they can be a really dynamic and very much a unifying combination, because unity is what racing needs with the factions that exist. But anyone who thinks that's going to be easy is kidding themselves.
With two female administrators at the top, let's hope one of the things they consider. I know that people will accuse me of flippancy in what I'm about to say, but with Julie Harrington and Anna Marie Phelps there, perhaps we can have a look at the name of the Horsemen's Group, because that really. Now, I don't want to seem achingly ex-BBC, but the Horsemen's Group in 2020 does give some. I'm probably being achingly right on. But I every time I see that word, I think of people like Anna Marie, of Julie, of the head of the Jockey Club, of other senior figures, and think, why on earth are we calling it Horsemen's Group, for goodness sake?
Lots to get her teeth stuck into when she takes over in John. We all wish her well. It's quite interesting. The first thing you see is the Horsemen's Group arguing straight away. Prize money is the number one issue. They've got the RTA saying it's the survival of racecourses.
I'm also concerned, Audie, she's a Man United fan. That's got to be a huge concern down the line.
That is big. That's not revealed anywhere else. So that could be an exclusive. I'm using that. Are you not one, Ed? I see you've got. Is it a replica shirt you've got on there? Has it got 10 Solskjaer on the back?
Red Sox.
Oh, beautiful.
You know, he says what a fan he is of Anna Marie Phelps, but if QPR and Southampton ended up in the same division, which, let's be honest, they have seemed likely to happen quite often in recent years. And has indeed happened on the odd occasion in recent years.
Yeah, in the Premier League.
Might not be quite, yeah, I'm not entirely sure that that's an accurate portrayal of the situation, but he might not be quite such a big fan of Anna Marie.
Now, one person we are a big fan of, one of the female stars of racing, Ebor, David. News came through this week that Connections have taken the decision not to run to York, to go to the September Stakes en route to the Arc. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I thought those that were being quite critical were a little bit wide of the mark on this occasion. I know we've seen many times over the last couple of years where you could accuse Gosden of managing to steer his best horses away from each other, and Ebor has benefited from that. Obviously, you know, she never had to take on Cracksman when she won one of her Prix de l'Arcs. And I think, you know, the fact that she's a 6-year-old mare, we've already got. Certainly this year is a bonus. Last year was arguably a bonus as well. You know, most fillies would have been retired with her CV at the age of 3, never mind racing on at 4. So I think the fact that we're enjoying her as a 6-year-old, that does allow Connections the freedom to pick and choose their races as they see fit. And, you know, if she can get to the Arc with some sort of claim, then all the better.
And Ed, there's an excellent interview with Ollie Bell, ITV Racing's Ollie Bell, did with John Gosden.
With Ollie Bell?
With Ollie Bell, not well, he's asking.
Gosden interviewed Bell.
We've kept Ollie out of the shot, you won't even know he's there. That's the beauty of the editing. We'll be on ITV Racing this weekend. We're using it on Sporting Live today. And John says that he's doing the right thing for the filly. That if you look at the perfect art, he pointed to Valgeese last year. It was July, put away, miss August, one run in September to bring you to the Boyle for the Arc. And let's be fair, the whole reason she was kept in training was to bid to win the third Arc.
Absolutely. And don't forget, we pinpointed this on this very podcast over the last couple of weeks, I think. The chances of her sidestepping the Ebor meeting. It's a shame. It's a shame because to have her in the Juddmonte or the Yorkshire Oaks up against Love would have been great sport, but it makes total sense. It really does. The funny thing now, what does Aidan do? You could be quite scurrilous, couldn't you? And now you know where she's going. The September Stakes might look a bit different, but we're showing that on ITV as well. So it's not the end of the world for us. It's just a shame, but it makes total sense. And David's absolutely spot on. How lucky are we to have her age 6? And there's one race that's the target. There's one race while she's in training, and they want to give her the best passage to that race, which makes total sense. Why bottom her in a Juddmonte or against Love in the Yorkshire Oaks and leave the Arc behind? It would make no sense at all. So to me, it's one of those ones. It's a shame, but it's not a massive story.
Why are you being so modest? You revealed on this podcast 7 days ago that it was going to happen. I'll tell you what, one or two of your ITV colleagues would not be quite as modest as you. You
speculated did. It just was so obvious. I had no inside information. It was just so obvious that they wouldn't take on Love. They were never going to go for the Juddmonte. And the September Stakes fits in well. So
I know plenty of regular listeners to this who have always had massive admiration for you, Ed, and they now think your finger is so firmly on the pulse that you're revealing
you left
news
off the S, regular
early.
Listener, I assume.
Just thank Lord Grimthorpe for the text.
But the other thing, if the Arc if the arc encounter between the female horses, between Enable and Love, much as we love the Knavesmire and much as we love York, if it happened at York, it would be nothing wrong with the Yorkshire Oaks for 1 second, or indeed the International Stakes. But the encounter racing wants, European racing wants, is at Longchamp in Paris in the Arc. So it would just be a great disappointment. And I think all it does, obviously Gosden it's perfect for Gosden to go there. Is it the first or the second Saturday in September en route? She had a relatively easy time when she went there before. That's quite possibly not going to be the case this time. But not only is it perfect for Gosden and his training, it's perfect for this really important story for European racing. The saucepan isn't going to come to the boil in August. It's not going to come to the boil in September. It's going to come to the boil in the Bois de Boulogne in October. Absolutely perfect. And she was in training to try and win this for the third time. And, also if she could win the King George again, that was obviously a big, but the grail is the Arc, isn't it?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. David, we've talked about Enable.
Thank goodness it's on ITV. I think they announced this in the last few days.
I believe you did, didn't you, Ed? Was it not this in the Irish Champions weekend?
Or have I made that up?
You made that up.
I dreamt it. I must have dreamt
made that
it.
There'll be a bit more liaising with the French, should we say, is not very straightforward. We'd love to show it, but there's a little way to go yet.
You announced news 7 days early last week. Maybe I've announced news 7 days early this week.
We have got the Irish Champions weekend, which is great.
That's what that's what I heard you announce.
But the Arc, we've never been able to announce. I would love to have. We've never been able to announce that before St Leger weekend, and so, last year I think was a fair bit of time after that. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
David, we've talked at length about Enable and the performances this season on the podcast, but she's heading into an Arc, to running in her fourth Arc, bidding for an unprecedented third win. On the back of that, winning the King George with a completely new cast in against. We're expecting Love to be there. Stradivarius is going to be there. It's a whole new race. How confident are you that Enable on her A game is going to be good enough to make history in Paris?
I wouldn't be confident, to be honest, and she definitely lost that aura of invincibility that she used to have, hasn't she? We saw her beaten in the race last year, and obviously, she was beaten in the Eclipse races. She won that race the previous year. We didn't really learn too much about her in what was ended up a pretty weak King George. We're going to obviously get to the Arc, the September Stakes. We're probably not going to learn anything new, certainly not going to see anything positive from that, So, she's not quite as good as what she was. I think she's probably going to go down on her, fighting again, maybe find one or two too good, but, you'd really love it if you could pull it out the fire. It just sounded a little bit like Kevin Keegan, but
love it.
We'll move on from that.
Yeah.
Just need to work on the hand gestures. That's all that was missing. Ed, let's talk about another Super 6-year-old. Let's talk about Batash, next week's Coolmore Lunthorpe Stakes looming large. Now, you channeled it in the David Coleman. Look at the clock at Goodwood. Are we going to be able to look at the clock at York? Our viewers on ITV are going to be able to see this horse. I mean, fingers crossed, it sounds like it would be right now at York, because it'd be absolutely perfect for a record. Are we going to be able to see on screen the time that he's running, the time that he's aiming at, and whether he's going to break this record?
Just to correct you there, Audie, just look at the time.
It wasn't
look at the
David
time.
Coleman, was it? Quite remarkable.
Well, it's over to William Darby, and I've got every faith in him. I made an appeal for it, and I've spoken to the great man. And as you know, when you ask William Darby for something or to do something, he never says no, does he? He'll always give it a right good go. It's just madness that in 2020 we don't have it at every racecourse, but that's just the nature of the sport. But it is such a big part of the story at York that I'm very hopeful. I think William has a plan, so might be able to pull it off. And it must be down the track, David Coleman Hoyles shouting, look at the time, rather than the presenter a minute later, in my opinion. And I think with Batash going for a track record against 2-year-olds in particular, for me, David, am I right in saying this is the race of the week?
It certainly looks it to me. And, you're going to look at the form and say it's another walkover for Batash. And, on the ratings, it perhaps should be. But you look at the horses that are in there taking him on. We've got Art Power, who he's never come up against before. Oxted, again, a rival that he hasn't taken on. A.R. Lee, the improving 3-year-old, and like Ed says, Golden Pal, the 2-year-old from Royal Ascot, who the speed that he showed there, you think that York will suit him even better than what Ascot did. So,
and quick ground. Quick ground
exactly.
will be crucial.
Yeah, the emphasis is going to be far more on speed at York than it was in the Norfolk, if the forecast is right. So, Batash sets a huge standard. He's probably going to win, but it's just nice that it's not going to be the walkover that, something like the King George was for him.
And Cornelius, we talked about Batash after the Goodwood and the comparisons with Deja that were inevitable. Angus Gold said half a length behind was his idea going into Goodwood. He's probably changed his mind after what he did there.
Yeah. He over 5 foot. Well, he didn't just break the record of Deja at on the Knavesmire, did he? He smashed it. It's, I suppose, when making comparisons between the two, obviously Timeform's got ratings, etc., to go on, but the versatility of Deja in comparison to Batash is striking. 5 or 6 furlongs he was okay with. Well, I'd love to see Batash having a go at 6 furlongs, because I wouldn't have thought there's any real reason why he wouldn't. He age 6 furlongs would be fine. But no, it's exciting. Can I throw another name into the mix, which is Keamoro, horse trained by Michael Dodds, and that's going to go. The owners, if you want to see a really amateurly shot, but quite nice if you take the amateurishness out of it, filming of racing at its roots in the countryside. I was on the gallops at Michael Dodds's this morning, as we record this on Wednesday morning. So I was on the gallops on this morning, and the grass gallop is between a whole lot of wheat, which is going to be harvested later this week. And it looks absolutely fantastic. And the owners of Keamoro were there, and it's £5,000 to enter, and they have agreed that they are going to have a go.
Another Sporting Live podcast exclusive.
We get thick and fast, aren't they?
Well played, Cornelius. Well played.
Funnily enough, I am the second, not necessarily the lesser distinguished, but the second media person to have been at Michael Dodds this week, because Derek Thompson, was around this week, and he went to see Dakota Gold, where he managed to get to, I don't know if you're not watching, you won't get this if you're just listening, but basically to nod his head quite dramatically. So Tomo went up to him and said, "Hey, big fella, you're going to be going for the Nunthorpe," and he duly nodded. And Michael Dodd says he's not going for the Nunthorpe, and he's going to, as long as it rains a bit in the Ripon area over the next few days, and let's be honest, some rain in the forecast, but it's terribly hit or miss. He'll defend his crown in the Great St Wilfrid Handicap at Ripon, which is on Sunday. Sunday on ITV.
Yes,
on ITV.
Did you hear Bruff Scott saying one of the lowest moments in his 70-year career, or whatever it is, was the other day when he was chatting outside? I think it was Ascot Racecourse, and they chatted away merrily. And at the end of it, the man said to him, "Thank you, Derek."
Anyway, Dakota Gold doesn't go, but Keamoro does go. And they think there'll be probably that a few people will be girding their loins to take on Batash. There'll probably be, there's decent prize money down to 5th place. And I think you get something for 6th. So they might as well have a go. And Keamoro being a female, if she was Group 1 place, then that clearly is very important for her future. But they think that Art Power probably will run, but will conditions probably wouldn't suit. David can probably comment on this. Do we think that he wants softer ground, or that's just basically what he favours?
Well, he's only raced on softer ground on turf at the moment, hasn't he? I don't think he's raced on anything quicker than what Timeform have called good to soft. And I remember his dam, Evening Time. She was a real mudlark. She burst onto the scene as a 2-year-old on heavy ground, winning a maiden and a listed race by something like 9 and 11 lengths. And all her best form came on softish ground. And you look at the previous foals that she's produced, and a lot of them, they've all done pretty much their best racings have come on softish ground.
So there's a ground question mark against Art Power.
Definitely, yeah.
And do we think Oxted will run? I know that Roger Teal joked after the July Cup, I'll have to go and talk to the lads. meaning the owners of this horse. But I've got the impression, rightly or wrongly, Ed, you've been on a lot more race courses than any of the rest of us over the last few weeks. The vibes I was getting that Oxford would probably wait to go to Haydock and might even go via a race in. Is there a race in France? Anyway, Haydock was the target. I got the impression.
Looks a better fit for him, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then I suppose Make a Challenge would come probably from Dennis Hogan's stable, but I think the ground would be an issue there. It's still intriguing despite the obvious presence of this Leviathan in Battash. Just talking of Battash, I've always called him Battash, but at Goodwood, a lot of Battashes appeared. What is there a definitive? Richard Hoyles must be the Ed must be the arbiter on this one. Battash or Battash?
I think he's a Battash man. I think.
Yeah.
But the double A.
Yeah, but also
got me doubting.
I noticed he's always, ever since my violin playing days, Stradivarius has been Stradivarius, but he became Stradivarius from a few people at Goodwood. And joking aside, and I know these are only minor things. Cato was a rather bigger thing. But I do think in terms of convincing the public to get to try and expand racing's attraction, when there are different, and Battash and Stradivarius, they are probably bad examples. Cato Star and Cato Star would be a better example. I do think that some people get quite confused. And I think it's such a silly thing to potentially put people off with. And going back years, my late mother used to say, who didn't really follow racing very much, this is before McCoy became as big as he became at the end. She said, is there a Tony McCoy and an AP McCoy? And, that's just another example. And it's just a sort of way of just making things not simplistic, it's not dumbing down. Just make it nice and easy to follow.
We always come to an agreement. We always come to an agreement. We would have met about this on that morning, on the Friday morning at Goodwood, and come up with what we were all going to say. We always go with the commentator, who was actually Mark Johnson that day. But I've always forgotten 2 days later.
I have a feeling he's a batter. I have a feeling that Johnston is a Battash person.
Do you remember Barry Davis was the one who used to throw things absolutely up in the air? I remember Solskjaer becoming Solskjaer overnight suddenly.
Well, was it Paolo Bonchope as well?
Yeah, do you remember? Yeah, absolutely right.
My talking of football, my former colleague John Murray used to always call him Lee Boyer, but no one else called him Lee. He was Lee Boyer, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was. Certainly in Leeds he was, definitely. David, before we leave that Nunthorpe...
I was Premier League yet? Oh, they are.
Yes, they are, thank you. Yes, safely ensconced. I haven't got a manager yet, but I'm sure we'll be signing a contract.
You may find, Dave, that as a Leeds fan, that Ed, as a Southampton fan, may suddenly start disliking you when Leeds go to St Mary's and give them a good hiding.
We've often done columns on the way home with
it. Doesn't happen with Everton, so I've never had to dislike you.
David, I need to move this on from the gutter where we're heading with this. Before we move on from the Nunthorpe, I said to Ed yesterday, we were talking, that it's a race with a history of either superstar striking performances that will live long in the memory, Oasis Dream, Deja, Battash last year, or it can throw up who'd have thunk it results. We've had big price horses winning this, seemingly taking steps forward, York specialists who for some reason run beyond themselves each and every year. It's not always straightforward, the Nunthorpe.
No, it isn't. And it's one of those things, isn't it? Was it Jawala that won at 50-1? And, it was a huge career highlight for her. And I think a lot of people probably thought the same when 100-1 shot Soul Power won the race. I thought that'd be his career highlight. And it just shows how sometimes, 100-1 winners, they're not necessarily flukes. He went on to become one of the top 5 furlong performers. And I think, was it 4 years later, he won the race again as a 7-year-old. So, yeah, I think we've seen as well with when Battash has gone there. Are we going with Battash? No.
Well, you are. Yeah, at least you're consistent.
He's gone there, not giving his run in on occasion. So it's not always the case that these 5 furlong horses do perform as you would wish every time. So yeah, hopefully Battash will turn up and do his stuff like we know he can on the day.
For me, Geordie, it's great finishes. That was my. If you ask me for the best finishes we've had on ITV in our tenure, our 3.5-year tenure, the 2 Nunthorpes. The first one, Lady Aurelia, getting touched off by Marshall with Hoyles' commentary. I'm sure. Oh, he's sure. I'm not. I'm talking about Frankie. I thought it was brilliant.
Great.
And then Alpha Delphini and who was it? Alpha Delphini? Mabs Cross, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant finish.
And Coastal Bluff and Jan Malak, was that the...
Yeah, 97.
That was 97, was it?
97,
and
yeah.
Was Alex Greaves the first female jockey then to win a Group 1 race?
Yeah,
and was that the first dead heat in a Group 1 race in the modern era?
Ooh, Alex Greaves is definitely right.
There wouldn't have been many, would there?
No, there wouldn't have been, would there?
And I remember it was pouring with rain, and it just started raining harder, and we waited longer and longer for the judge to come up. And it was almost as though he was looking out of his thing saying, "How wet are you all getting? I'll wait another 10 seconds before I develop the film." No, it was great. And some of the performances as well. Lock Song will live long in the memory from my point of view. And more recently, we were just talking about Michael Dodd's Mecca's Angel, who was a wonderful horse on those occasions.
So much to look forward to at York next week. We'll be previewing the action from the Knavesmire in advance, of course, and reacting to it each day. But Ed, I want to talk about part of the Batash story, and a huge part of it. And in fact, the Charlie Hills trained sprinter story is his owner, Hamdan Al-Maktoum, who is enjoying an absolutely...
And Bob.
And Bob. But the owner himself is enjoying such a remarkable summer. The big meetings coming in, rolling in. He's had such a spell in the doldrums. Isn't it wonderful to see his colours back at the top all of a sudden? And it's interesting hearing those closely connected, Angus Gold, etc. His frustration not being able to be there to enjoy it is the one thing that he's feeling. He's got the amount that he's invested in the sport over the years. And he's been without decent horses for so long. Now, bang, 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 they're coming thick and fast.
Absolutely. And we'll be showing Des Jours, I'm sure, next week. We showed Nashwan winning at Salisbury, which I loved at the weekend. So it's not exactly been a short period of time either, the amount of support he's given to this sport. So yeah, it's a good thing and a tough time for owners that those blue and white colours are having so much success, because hopefully he will keep supporting like he has. And you'd like to think, I imagine you'd like to think, Audie, that Marcus Tregonning might get little way up the pecking order with the Hamdan horses, you'd have thought, after what Mahatha has done. And yeah, listen, it's such a shame he's not been there to see it. It's such a shame that so many people have missed out. But I mean, it's just been an unbelievable summer for the blue and white, particularly at Royal Ascot, when you think back to all those winners at Royal Ascot, where Mahatha was one that missed out when they had so many winners. But it's been just an epic season for them. You're right.
And God, it's a huge time coming now. We're about to go into the sales season, September and October, and a lot of interest now in what the owners are going to do with the prize money levels where they are, and we're in a recession. These are really difficult times for everybody. The support for Shadwell to continue investing at their same level, for the trainers, for the sport, it's huge, isn't it? The fact that he's had such a good season, you hope will encourage him yet again. Because let's be fair, Mahatha was bought at the sales. I'll come on to Minzal with David in a minute. An exciting 2-year-old just won for Owen Burrows, 85,000 purchased at the sales. A lot of these horses are commercial horses that have been purchased rather than homebreds from the stud.
Yeah. And, I was just looking up, I was fascinated how old Hamdan was yesterday. So I went to look him up. And how old will everyone go for? Do you want to go high or low on 70?
Lower.
High.
Go higher.
Right, so do you want to go higher or low on 75?
Good game, this.
Higher.
Ooh.
Right, do you want to go high or low on 80? Just
Lower.
Be careful.
I think I go low on 80.
He was born on December the 25th, 1945. So he is 75, soon to be 75. But his enthusiasm, obviously we haven't seen him on the track this year, but his enthusiasm, one gets the impression is right there. I was struck actually by something Marcus Tregonning said. How many winners do you think Marcus Tregonning has trained for him? I was quite surprised. There was when I knew we were talking Hamdan today, I looked up the trainer. And the great thing about the form books that exist in racing, it's so easy to look these things up. John Dunlop's his top trainer with 491 successes. Marcus Tregonning, what are you going to go for, Dave? How many do you think he's trained for?
250?
Oh, you looked it up as well.
I did.
256, actually, 256.
Oh.
Richard Hills, riding-wise, has rode 1,186 winners for him. Willie Carson, 393. But there are lots of great names. Tom Jones, Alex Stewart, Peter Walwyn, Robert Armstrong, Barry Hill, some of the real Leviathan trainers of the last sort of 30, 40 years. No, his enthusiasm's obviously there. Having him as such an important supporter is obviously crucial. Times are hard for the industry as a whole, but perhaps one thinks that the sheikhs are probably going to be going to the sales with still having decent sized checkbooks to wave around. So yeah, it's very big, and he's he has been champion owner 6 times already, and was as recently as 2014. But I think it's the quantity of the quality, isn't it? This year, he's obviously bang up there, but maybe not with a massive amount of high quality horses. At the moment, he has got the quality and the quantity of quality, which is not only something to admire him for, but to admire his whole team for. They've obviously been operating really, really well. Marcus said to Ed, I think to you at Goodwood on television, and this was a good thing to say, he's got a great sense of humour, he said, Sheikh Hamdan, because he does look quite a serious, business-like sort of guy around the place. But he's got, I think, Marcus, who would bring out a sense of humour probably in anybody, including David Ord, brings out a good sense of humour in him as well. So there'll be plenty of smiles and delight over Mahatha and all these other horses.
So Trago,
you'll have to forgive me a second, Audie. Sam Chamberlain's come into the attack for Hampshire.
Oh, well, honestly, I'm going to go to David Johnson for some proper racing discussion now. You watch cricket for a while.
I can watch it. I'm just rudely looking
well,
aside.
Don't you worry. I see Trago mentioned ITV Racing in the Racing Post Weekend of Stable Tour this weekend. What a great job you're doing again. So the loving continues. But David, I want to talk about his successor at Kingwood House. Owen Burrows went in there. And under pressure, a lot of people were feeling they've got a lot of horses, well-bred horses, and maybe things haven't gone quite as well as they would have hoped. They are this year. And a lot of spotlight on Marcus Tregoning having a good season. What a season Owen Burrows is having in at Kingwood. Again, a wonderful man to deal with from the media. Absolutely tremendous guy to interview. And he's introduced 2 2-year-olds, or had 2 2-year-old winners, one at Maiden at Doncaster, one at Salisbury on Sunday. That looked colt of rich potential.
Yeah, definitely. It was Minzar, wasn't it, that won at Salisbury. And he'd made his debut at Ascot in what's usually a warm newcomers race. I think Mums Tipple had won the race the previous year. So, you usually get horses running in that are felt, to be well above average. And to be honest, he was a little bit unlucky there. With a clear run, he might well have won on that occasion. So, he went to Salisbury. He was expected to win, definitely. It was a short price, but I don't think you could have anticipated that he'd win it in the style that he did. Just sort of nudge clear, finish absolutely full of running, sort of winning by a wide margin. We rated that 94 with a large P on time form ratings. The speed figure was pretty good. The sectional upgrade on top of that, you're adding extra on for that. And then, like I say, with a little bit more on top of that for the style of it, for me, you're looking at a horse that's well capable of going into group races, whether they'll run him turned out quickly in something like the Jim Crack or wait perhaps for something like the Mill Reef. He looks that kind of calibre, and is another good horse, I think, for first season sire Memas, who's made a really good start. And, he was obviously a fast and precocious 2-year-old himself, and he's getting plenty of those that look like they take just after him. And
in terms of the first season size now, it's really important for them, isn't it, David? Right now, we're coming around to the sale season, second time round. They need to make, certainly horses that are breeding sprint, they need to make a very quick impact at stud. Or all of a sudden, the next generation are rolled in, and you're flying down the pecking order, the stud fees going, and you can go out to fashion like that as a stallion.
You can, yeah. I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? People that retire these 2-year-olds that don't race at 3, they've got a fair bit of criticism from traditionalists that say, we'd far rather see these horses race on, and, racing should be about, going on as 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. But I think Memas, in terms of numbers, was one of the most supported stallions in terms of number of covers as a first season sire. His results show that there's a clear demand, and it's not going to put people off retiring these precocious 2-year-olds, is it, when you can see that the results are there when they do it?
Definitely. Interesting story.
I mentioned another horse of Owen Burrows, one of the Royal Ascot winners. I see Hookham, which won the George V handicap at Ascot, I'm not sure whether he's due to run, but is in at Newbury on whichever day this weekend the Geoffrey Freer is on. Is that on Saturday?
Yeah,
Saturday. Yeah. On ratings, he's got a lot of ground to make up on some of his opponents. However, he's only run until three times, I think. The way Owen Burrows is going, and there were, talking of Owen Burrows, it wasn't just under pressure. There was definitely whispering behind hands. He won't be around very, very much longer. And obviously he has answered his critics in good style. And Huckham or Hookham, better ask Richard Hoyles which one. Can you send me a text after you've had your meeting on Saturday
I know which one
morning?
I prefer it to be, because there's a bit of a problem. Yeah, need to get one of them definitely right.
Oh, yeah, well, I hadn't even thought of that. You have got the filthiest mind. What a
Just have to be careful with these things, Cornelius.
You've got, now he's not going
being my
to
least favourite of the blue and white brigade.
Yeah. He's not going to be making me go to my lucky betting shop, Huckham. Actually, Hookham is better, isn't it?
Very much so.
but I think he's a really interesting runner. I just throw in that I will be going to the lucky betting shop. In fact, I've been already, because I'm not going to go into the town of the lucky betting shop for a day or two. But we have got the Hungerford Stakes at Newbury. Is that on ITV? I'm sure it is.
Yeah, good race as well.
Over 7 furlongs. So I think Dream of Dreams is an absolutely fascinating contender, because he's won over 7 furlongs in the past, most of his racing over 6. But the way he finishes those 6 furlong Group 1, or the last 2 6 furlong Group 1s at Royal Ascot, 7 furlongs, looks as though it'll be fine. And somebody said to me this morning, he wants rain softened ground, but he won on good firm. But he's obviously quite likes a bit of dig in the ground, as they say. So I'm looking forward to.
I think Sheen Murphy rides, doesn't he?
Oh, Sheen Murphy riding for the Michael Statt stable. Interesting contender, but also in the race, One Master is in there, Limato is in there as well. But no, I'm looking forward to Dream of Dreams on ITV on Saturday afternoon.
Fantastic. And on ITV next week, we can look ahead, Ed, to the Welcome to Yorkshire.
ITV sponsoring this podcast this
week. They get good hits on social if you include them on the thing. I've learned the lessons. It's all a big game. I haven't heard the thump of Will I Want Leather yet. Ed, it must be keeping a nice tight over together there. There's been no...
Yeah. Ish.
Watch out behind you, Ed. Behind you.
Push your dad syndrome there. But Ed, it's the Welcome to Yorkshire Ebor Festival. I'm biased, and David might well. I don't want to put words into my mouth. It's the highlight of the racing year for us northern racing fans. Wonderful racing at York. Sadly, behind closed doors, as it all is at the moment. How much are you looking forward to it? And when you look back, what are the days that stand out that you've had at the Knavesmire?
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? I must say, quality-wise, in the last few years, it's been the best week of the lot, really. And it's got the lot next week. Brilliant 2-year-old races. The Great Voltager should be an absolute belter, which might make up for a Yorkshire Oaks that who knows who's going to turn up to take love on. The Sky Bet Ebor is going to be a cracker, and the Juddmonte again. Gayeth, will we fall in love with Gayeth finally against Lord North? So it's a cracking week with so many great memories. I mean, those Nunthorpes have been fantastic. Last year, Frankie in tears after an Ebor. We thought that was goodbye last year. Do you remember? It's just a week that's got the lot with the beauty of York, and it's just so sad that, again, say it every time, that people aren't going to be there to enjoy it, because it's going to be spectacular action again, I'm sure.
David, it is a hugely special week, well, racing-wise anyway, but for the when you look back over the years, what are the days that stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going to the Ebor meeting regularly. I think 2003 was the first year I went, and was lucky enough to see Falbrav when he won the Juddmonte that year. And he's one that I look back now and I realise I didn't really appreciate how good he was at the time and what he was doing there. But, excuse me, you look at the Roll of Honour down the Juddmonte International, authorised beating Dylan Thomas, the 3-year-old Derby winner beating the King George winner, things like that. See the Stars, that was only a 4-runner race, beating the 3 Aidan O'Brien runners, and obviously everybody that was there that saw Frankel, we saw him winning by a wide margin in the Queen Anne the time before that. But for me, I think the Juddmonte was his most perfect performance. You think about the horses he was beating there, St Nicholas Abbey, Far, real top quality Group 1 horses themselves. And when Quealy just sort of came down the outside and just cruised past them on the bridle, it was just absolutely, something to see. Even now I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck.
Yeah, same. Absolutely.
I describe it. And, we've seen some great races, even mentioning, the Nunthorpe as well, Oasis Dream. He won the first year I went there, and just such, we know there's so much happening in the world right now that makes what we're suffering as horse racing fans really small fry. But, in terms of our little bubble, not being able to go to York and see these horses here, it is one of those things that you look back and think, you know, it is a shame.
I just want to end with you with memories of that 2012 Frankel and that Juddmonte International. We were fortunate enough to be there, and the reaction as he came back into the winners' enclosure to Henry Cecil afterwards, it was just one of those days that will never fade.
Yeah, but I completely agree about Frankel. But I started making a list of when you said that, you know, this was going to be an occasion to do a bit of reflecting, started making a list of the 4 major prizes at York, and the Nunthorpe going right back to horses like Lochnagar and Sharpo and Never So Bold a long time ago, Locksong in the 90s, Yorkshire Oaks, we've obviously been really spoiled with Enable and Sea of Class in recent years, Diminuendo going right the way back, Sea Pigeon winning the Ebor, what was that, 79 would you say? Might have been 80. But
79 because with the TV blackouts, you can't see that or Troy's Benton and Hedges winning. There's no video replays.
Sea Pigeon, and then I remember Sergeant Cecil in the Ebor winning that. There's quite a lot of hype around Sergeant Cecil. But in terms of the Juddmonte International, you know, Frankel, you've mentioned, See the Stars. Do you remember that? I can't remember which year it was. The 3-way go, as some commentators would say, between One So Wonderful, Faithful Son, and Chester House. That was the 3-way finish, wasn't it? Can't remember which year it was, but that was a cracker. But my personal favourite was 1990 and In the Groove. And Steve Cawthon rode In the Groove for David Ellsworth, who in 1990, remember, Desert Orchid was still racing at the time. So Whitsbury, now home of Marcus Tregonning, had both Desert Orchid in it, lots of steeplechasing superstars, but also In the Groove, who won the Musadora at York, won the Irish Guineas, been beaten in the Oaks, and then came. Steve Cawthon had this massive aura around him. It wasn't sort of Frankie, because he wasn't sort of, he didn't jump off horses and shout and scream, and he was just he had this aura, sort of more almost a Piggott-like aura, because he was such a professional, such a star American coming to ride in the UK, and he rode In the Groove, and she won that day in Great Star, went on to win, she won the Champion Stakes, I think, later on that season, and the Coronation Cup the following year. And so In the Groove was my absolute favourite. I loved it. People loved In the Groove. And then 25 years later, if my maths is right, David Ellsworth goes and wins the race again in rather more surprising style with Arabian Queen. And there was so much drama that day because beat a well-fancied, a very strongly fancied favourite. And then Elsie, one of the great characters of British racing, perhaps of all time, refused to come out to the winners' enclosure because he hadn't been asked to lunch, which, in retrospect, I'm sure he'd agree it wasn't a great look, because Juddmonte International do put a lot of support into the race. But it was another twist and turn in a race that's full of twists and turns. I won't be able to go to the 4 days this year. Personally, I don't like the Ebor on Saturday. I see why it's on a Saturday. I think it makes the Saturday not quite as strong as the first 3 days. But it's a great week, and it'll, from a personal point of view, won't be able to go, and it'll be a great sadness not to be there.
No, absolutely. It's a wonderful week, and can't wait to bring all the action to you from Sporting Life next week. We'll have all the podcast previews, reviews, etc. Thank you very much to the trio, and it's a quartet. Well, thank you myself then for their time again. My thoughts are with Sam Chamberlin for the drive home, looking at.
He just finished his second over. Still, he hasn't struck yet. No wickets.
Oh dear.
Right. No fours either.
There was one boundary, I'm afraid. Yeah, there was one boundary. His body language is absolutely dreadful. He'll be his father will be having a word at half time.
An awful drive home for that young man. Thoughts firmly with Sam there. Well, thank you to David, to Ed, and to Cornelius. Don't forget to head over to Timeform for their race pass service and all their thoughts on the weekend action. Racing every day, big racing at the weekend too. Ed and Cornelius will be with us again next week. Hopefully David will be as well. I'm not getting rid of you there, David. I'm just sending people to Timeform first. Thank you for listening, and best of luck with your own weekend wages.